Greetings, everyone. I don't actually own any of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, so we'll just move the music stand out of the way. Well, at long last, the Transformers has exited the analog days and begins to stumble into the digital age. It's a bit of the last blast for Transformers on VHS, because there was a lot of crossover during the initial phases of the transition, and then finally we got full proper season sets of the Transformers on DVD, courtesy of the fine incompetent idiots at Rhino Home Video. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Well, the first things to appear on DVD as far as the TV show went were these. Well, this is the first one. This is Heroes, as they call it, which is actually the Ultimate Doom storyline from near the end of the first season of the show. I was always kind of wondering why they didn't do it as 4 episodes on this disc, because there's also Countdown to Extinction, which of course is a nice little epilogue that clearly, obviously, totally ties in and is meant to directly follow the Ultimate Doom. But for whatever reason, they didn't include it on this particular DVD. Now, this DVD was also released on VHS with the exact same cover art. I did not own this because I already had the Ultimate Doom several times over between the Family Home Entertainment and Malofilm releases, so I did not see the purpose in purchasing it yet again. I should also note, I also have my original low-fidelity mono EP mode recorded VHS recording of the original first airing of the Ultimate Doom on television. Yeah, I actually have my original VHS tape. It's one 6-hour tape with most of the first season of the Transformers on from the original airings. And I will make mention of that from time to time when we start talking a little bit about episode continuity. But that's another story for another time. Anyway, at the same time they released the Heroes set, they also released the Villains set, which contained The Rebirth, parts 1 to 3, which of course is often referred to as Season 4, because it's basically all that was completed for the proposed 4th season of the Transformers. Some would say that that's a good thing, because The Rebirth is a bit of a mess. Yeah, you get a lot of new characters introduced, some of which only get one line of dialogue, like literally one line of dialogue, one moment where they're on screen, and then you never see them again. Yeah, I think the problem was they were unsure if they were going to get a new season, so, you know, normally if they had a whole season, they could have episodes that spotlight different characters, which is what they did in the previous 3 seasons, but yeah, they didn't get that opportunity, so basically we just get these brief fleeting glimpses of some of these characters, never to be seen again. Yeah, when the Japanese series came out of the Headmasters a couple years later, they actually disregarded the Rebirth as being a part of the original series continuity and just carried on from the end of the Return of Optimus Prime. So this one I actually did own, because at the time I did not have the Rebirth in any form, so pretty cool. And I also had the Generation 2 release of the Rebirth, which I can't actually remember which one I got first. I think I might have got them both around the same time. I think I originally got the Generation 2 version of Rebirth thinking it was going to be modified like the other Generation 2 episodes, but as it turns out it was the one story arc released under the Generation 2 name on VHS that was not modified. Of course, as we've discussed ad nauseum before, all the other releases were in fact the modified Generation 2 versions. So yeah, Transformers wikis, update your damn pages about them. Thanks! So the Heroes and Villains releases were the last of the sort of random episode releases. I guess the previous 12 volumes that have been released and the 2 blockbuster exclusives and the Heroes and Villains sets had enough sales numbers to persuade Rhino that, hey, there might just be a market for season sets of this show. Now this was the early 2000s, so the VHS releases here were all released over the course of the year 2000, and then the first DVDs, I believe, came out in 2001, and then the first season set came out later in 2001, and then the releases continued over the course of 2002 through to 2003. Now at first glance, the season sets look pretty spiffy. This is the season 1 set. Here, take a look at that. That's pretty snazzy. This nice silver design. There's slightly oversized digipacks. You know, they had nice interior art. You can see there's artwork on all the discs. And they had replica animation cells included with each set as well. So pretty cool in terms of the packaging. I definitely got to give them kudos for that. I mean, these things look pretty damn nice on your shelf. I have seen them before, you know, held them in my hand, and some of my friends collected them. So I have seen them up close and gotten a chance to look through them. And they are very nice sets. But here's where it all falls down. Where the original VHS releases and the first 2 DVD releases, with the 3-episode story arcs on them, were made using the original 1-inch broadcast master tapes, the DVDs, well, they had the best of intentions, because they actually found 35mm film prints of the episodes. And they're like, oh, this is going to be so much better. We'll do new transfers of these, and it'll look beautiful, and it'll be the best looking Transformers ever. We'll really give it the deluxe treatment. But here's the problem, is it turns out that those 35mm film prints were not complete versions of the episodes. Some of them were, but a lot of them weren't. In fact, about 11 of the 16 episodes of Season 1 were either incomplete or had animation mistakes that would have been later corrected for the broadcast versions. So Rhino essentially just went, screw it, and put them out on the DVDs anyway. But they went one step further because they really wanted this to be a deluxe presentation. Yeah. So rather than just go with the original mono audio and maybe do a bit of light stereo mixing, they thought, let's do a new 5.1 surround sound mix for this mid-80s afternoon cartoon show that was originally broadcast with mono sound. Alright, fine. Now, okay, you may recall many years ago I did a review of the Voltron collection, the collector's tins of Voltron. Now, in the case of Voltron, they did a new 5.1 sound mix of the audio, but here's the difference. Voltron was originally recorded and mixed in stereo, and for those DVD releases, they got their hands on the original audio masters, which, with stereo television still being pretty new at the time, those audio masters were on multi-track tapes, which meant they had discrete individual channels for all the individual sound elements. So they were able to do beautiful new 5.1 surround mixes using nothing but the original audio. Now, there's a reason I mention this, because when Rhino went and decided to do their 5.1 mix for Transformers, oh, they used the original audio, but then they added a whole bunch of sound effects that were never present in the original audio. Fans were outraged, absolutely outraged. The Transformers message boards and fan forums just lit up with angry fans, like, what the hell is going on? There's animation mistakes all over the place, episodes are incomplete, effects are missing, and then the audio is this new 5.1 mix that shoehorns in all these new sound effects that were never there to begin with. And to make matters worse, okay, you gotta understand, Transformers fans are a pretty perceptive bunch. They know what is or isn't supposed to be there. Why? Because they've been watching the episodes since they were kids. They are intimately familiar with every nuance of every single episode of that show. They know it better than the back of their hands. You know, I mean, really, how well do we know the backs of our hands? But anyway, they were outraged. So they called Rhino out on it and said, hey, Rhino, what's up with the sound effects? Now, Rhino had hired this outside audio company called Magno Sound to do the mix. So the fans got in touch with Magno Sound. Magno Sound said, oh no, all those sound effects you hear were in the original mix. We just made them more prominent in the 5.1 mix. Really? Let's see what one fan had to say about that, shall we? This is from the Alt Toys Transformers news group. Now this is in reference to the Season 2 set, in which the same things were done again. Now to be fair, most of the work print errors, in terms of the animation mistakes, mostly occurred during the first season. Seasons 2 and 3, I guess they were under more time pressure to crank out the episodes. There wasn't as much time for retakes, which is why you may notice a lot of mistakes actually made it on the air. So a lot of the mistakes that you see in the DVD sets now are actually as they were originally broadcast. They've become beloved mistakes. So there are mistakes that are supposed to be there because they were there from the beginning, but there are mistakes that were not supposed to be there that were introduced when Rhino used the work prints. So here's what one user on Alt Toys Transformers had to say about the added sound effects. I'm not even halfway through the first episode of the Season 2 DVD set, and the sound effects added by Rhino are driving me crazy. Every single sound effect is accompanied by a sizzle that sounds like something flying into a bug zapper. Optimus' rifle shots aren't supposed to sizzle. Megatron's fusion cannon shots aren't supposed to sizzle. Every explosion of any kind doesn't have a sizzling sound. I'm surprised that the transformation noise isn't accompanied by a continuous sizzling noise. I know these episodes from the mid-80s, and these inappropriate sound effects are completely ruining the viewing experience for me. Rhino, do not add new sound effects to the rest of the DVD sets. It is incredibly annoying to those who grew up with the episodes and know what all the sound effects are supposed to sound like. See what I mean? Perfect example. Fans know what should or shouldn't be there. It's like buying Roy Rogers' greatest hits only to find that the people releasing the album inserted electric guitar riffs and techno pop here and there to make it sound cooler. People want the original product, not a touched-up version. I know it is not because the original sound effects are unrecoverable from the masters, because you can still make them out under the sizzle sounds. Also, the sound effects were fine on the VHS tapes Rhino released a few years ago. And that's, of course, because they used the original 1-inch broadcast masters and left the mono sound intact. But there was this attitude like, oh, if it's on DVD, it has to be in surround sound. No, actually it doesn't. We have plenty of DVDs of old movies and such that use mono sound because it's true to the source. Why didn't they do that with Transformers? You may never know. So carrying on, they released Season 2 in 2 volumes. We have Season 2 Part 1. Again, quite nice, and you can see it's quite a deluxe package and such. So after the fan outrage of Season 1, a lot of fans got in touch with Rhino about it and such, and tried to get them to correct it and said, well, okay, if you want to have the 5.1 mix, at least give us the option of having the original audio. I mean, it's DVD for crying out loud. You can have multiple audio tracks. And they're just like, oh, okay, sorry, we'll give you a 2.0 track as an option, and then, you can have that if you don't want the surround sound. And at first fans are like, oh, good. At least Season 2 onward we can have the original sound. So what ended up happening? They got the 5.1 mix on the one track, and then a 2.0 mix of the 5.1 mix. So all the added sound effects were still in the 2.0 mix, just mixed down to stereo instead of surround sound. Ah! How hard is it just to keep the original audio as an option? Seriously. Yeah. And then, it's been so long ago I can't remember all the little nuances of what specific things were wrong with what specific sets. I think that was only during one of the Season 2 sets, and then the other Season 2 set they had the original mono audio as an option. So it only took like half the series to finally start giving the fans what they wanted. Yeah, so anyway, here's Season 2 Part 2. I wasn't able to find as many pictures of the later seasons. I think by then people were less inclined to scan them because they just started caring less and less. Yeah, and then I think by Season 3, which again was split into 2 parts, which was kind of cheap of them. I mean, it's only 30 episodes or so. They could have easily put that in one set. I think by that point they had actually got the audio part of it right so that you were getting the original audio. But yeah, Seasons 1 and 2 were completely messed up, and it was really unfortunate. So for all the fancy schmancy packaging, Rhino really messed it up where it was important, namely the quality of the presentation itself. The packaging was great, the menus were really snazzy apparently, but the episodes were just, it was just a travesty what they did to the show. It really was. I mean, some of them were so badly messed up that they were, a lot of fans consider them unwatchable. Which is why I was kind of left scratching my head when Shout Factory announced their collection coming out, And, you know, of course, by this point, I'm a little more into talking to the people in the industry, and I talked to Brian Ward about it quite a bit. In fact, he came to me before it was even announced that they were doing the set, and asked me specifically if I could give him information or point him to a website or whatever about what specifically had been wrong with the Rhino sets, so that Shout Factory would not duplicate those mistakes, and if at all possible, could fix those mistakes in their version. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. But the point is, Shout Factory went out of their way not to duplicate Rhino's mistakes. They were well aware of how outraged fans were with Rhino's handling of the sets, and did not want to make the same mistake. They wanted a set that fans would enjoy and be proud to own. So I say I was left kind of scratching my head, because I saw a lot of comments from fans, because I don't consider true fans to be people who would be satisfied with those Rhino sets. I'm sorry. If you were satisfied with those Rhino sets, you are not a true, hardcore, longtime Transformers fan, because that is not how it's supposed to look and sound. Seeing these fans saying, oh, I'm not going to bother upgrading to the Shout Factory set. You know, the Rhino sets are exactly the way I remember them. It's like, well, you might want to get your memory checked, because that's not how they aired. That is a fact that is easily provable. In fact, there's YouTube videos all over the internet, all over YouTube, that show you side-by-side comparisons. Original aired version, Rhino version. Yeah, you know, it's a no-brainer. If you remember them that way, then you have a faulty memory. Bottom line. And then other people saying like, well, I'm not going to bother double dipping on Transformers, you know, because I already have the Rhino sets, and I'm only going to buy it all again if it comes out on Blu-ray. Which leads to the question, will Transformers ever come out on Blu-ray? Probably thinking, well, they have 35mm film prints. They could put those on Blu-ray. Yes, they could, but 35mm film prints, beautiful as they are wrong. So, yeah. Maybe it's possible, maybe not, but maybe we'll discuss that a little more in depth in another episode. Anyhow, that essentially wraps up the Rhino DVDs. There is one that they actually got right, and that was their DVD release of Transformers the movie, which is actually not a bad release at all. But we'll talk about the various Transformers movie releases in another episode as well. So just a couple little addendums here. The absolute last VHS releases ever of Transformers. I'm speaking specifically of the North American market. I'm not going to go into all the worldwide releases because there's just way too many of them and it would take a million years. But the last two North American VHS releases of Transformers were Season 1. So this is the Season 1 set. And as far as I know, in this case, the VHS tapes were taken from the same masters used for the DVDs. So these ones you probably want to avoid. I don't have absolute confirmation on that, because by this point everybody I know was buying the DVDs rather than the VHS tapes, so I don't know anybody who actually owned these particular VHS tapes. So they put out Season 1 and Season 2 Part 1. So these contain all the same episodes as the corresponding DVD sets, but I'm guessing without the extras. I don't know. As I say, there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about these. All I know for sure is these were the last VHS releases ever. In addition to the DVD season sets and the two VHS season sets, you could also get the individual discs of the seasons of Transformers as individual single disc volumes. I don't know why you would want to do that, because it would take up so much shelf space, but you could if you wanted to. As far as I know, they released all of them that way. I don't know for certain though. Honestly, I don't care about the Rhino releases enough to do a lot of deep research about them, because why would you want them? The only reason I would ever buy the Rhino releases is strictly for the packaging, just as a nice display piece, and that's it. And I guess some of the extras, because they did have some extras on there. It's funny because some of the mistakes they did try to fix digitally in 2001, which was like the dawn of that kind of digital editing. Yeah, they were really trying to do things that was just beyond their means to do effectively. So I remember reading something from a fan talking about one of the extras on the DVD sets where they showed the remastering process and how they used high-tech digital wizardry to correct some of the incorrect colors of the various characters in some of the work print shots. and they said they corrected them from being wrong and being one color to being a different, completely wrong color. So it's like their corrections did nothing and were just as wrong as the original versions, you know? And there's a featurette about that, which makes it even more hilarious. So there's like a featurette showing how they corrected the image by making it wrong to wrong. You know? Good job, Rhino. Way to be on the ball. I mean, it's not like there aren't a million resources out there to find out what color a fucking Transformer is supposed to be. I mean, come on. Now, the one final addendum, the one thing that makes the Rhino releases particularly annoying until now, is the fact that the masters they created for their DVDs were then sub-licensed to other companies and considered the best DVD masters available for a very long time. So we had a few re-releases that actually used the Rhino masters. For example, Metrodome in the UK. Okay, I'll cover one foreign release. This is their complete series release of the Transformers on DVD. This uses all the Rhino masters, just converted to PAL. Yep. Great. Let's spread the crap as far and wide as we can. Oh, it doesn't stop there. When the Rhino releases went out of print, there was a Chinese company. Now, this is not a Chinese bootleg. This is actually a legitimate release, apparently. Legitimate, licensed Chinese release. Quite beautiful, too. We'll take a look at a few pictures of the packaging here. This beautiful tin set. Again, something I might consider getting just for the packaging, but it's the Rhino Masters again. We just can't escape them. Now that Shout Factory's done their set and all the work that they put into it, which we'll cover in an upcoming episode, I'm hoping that that becomes the new standard, and that becomes the masters that everybody uses for future releases. You know, the funny thing is, the Rhino releases, as much as they hyped up the fact that they were using 35mm film prints, they didn't transfer the films properly in the first place. So they had these wonderful quality prints, but they didn't transfer them properly. So they ended up with jaggies in the image. So they didn't do it as a proper 3:2 pull down conversion to 60 fields of interlaced video per second, which is what NTSC is. So yeah, so it's like there was just nothing right about this. There really wasn't. There was a handful of episodes that were fine, but they had the 5.1 audio, or if they didn't have the 5.1 audio, they had other problems, and it's just went on and on. So yeah, fuck the Rhino sets. You don't want them. And if you have them, and especially if you paid a lot of money for them, you have my sincerest condolences. No fan of the Transformers should have to put up with that low standard of quality. Although they do look nice on the shelf. Alrighty, so that is definitely it for the VHS era. Now we are full swing into the DVD era. So I think next time we're going to crack this puppy open and finally take a look inside. So we'll see you then. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.